Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for my client Mike's vlog. And we started the week off with a max effort bench with the Buffalo bar, and Mike reported back to me, he goes, that thing was hard, this is the hardest bar I've ever benched on. He stopped at 315. You know, again, keeping in mind Mike has benched 350 with a pause on camera for you guys. He's just like, yeah, that bar was a lot. So what we're doing with this phase of training for him, because he's been feeling really fatigued, he's starting to get beat up, and he's decided to cut just a little bit further. He wants to cut down a little more. He's like, I need to get a little bit leaner. I know I need to. So he was starting to get a little fatigued. So what I told him we're going to do, we're going to adjust his volumes a little bit, and we're going to reduce volumes or remove the movements that really beat him up the most. So like a JM presses, the good mornings, the heavy good mornings, he uses a lot of weight on those now. They're starting to really fatigue him, so I cut those down to only 1 day a week. We replaced the JM presses with smaller dumbbell extensions, and just generally made his workloads a little lighter, a little easier for a couple of weeks. Let him get recovered, make it up through the Christmas holidays. Then we'll go back and start going a little harder again. But particularly when he's cutting, again, it's starting to beat him up. So what did we do for supplemental work? We did dumbbell presses on his max effort day. We did seal rows. We did some lateral raises with cables. Again, easier movements here, right? Instead of doing the floor presses, because he's pretty strong on floor presses, we just went over and did dumbbells. We'll be able to handle a little bit less weight. We'll have lighter weights. We'll be able to get just a little more range of motion, so we get good hypertrophy out of the lighter weight. And of course we rotated in some dumbbell extensions, because even the JM presses, running chains, he's just like, starting to get a little beat up, because we had switched over to using chains instead of weights on the bar. But Mike's got really, really strong triceps, right? So we can back the JMs off for just a bit. We can work on all this stuff this way. Again, forcing him to do exercises that make him use lighter weights, and that's the idea. Notice his max effort stuff. That 315 is not a heavy bench for him. He can do 5 reps easily with 315 on it with a straight bar, but it was his max with that one. We're just bringing down that fatigue. Same thing here. I made him do a safety bar good morning, off of slings or pins, right? He chose to do slings. It's like 331 having to do it from that dead stop, and he's like, that's all I could handle. But that's good. We strained, and we forced him to strain with a lighter weight for 1 rep. All right, on max effort lower day, we do some pull-ups. I have a lot of my lifters do back work, by the way, which you guys will notice in the vlogs. Not all of them, but a lot of them do back work on all 4 days. Okay. My logic being, we can oftentimes get away with it in the sense of they're not primary movers. Most of these back muscles are support muscles. They're stabilizers for our big lifts. So I'm not as worried about having a little bit of fatigue the day before. Let's just get more overall volume on it spaced out, right? And, it works really well, because a lot of my lifters need a lot more upper and middle back. Like, you can never have those areas too developed. But by that same token, we're not as concerned with them being a little fatigued when we come to our big lifts, because, as we note, they're not primary movers. Okay, they're often stabilizers. So I don't mind doing it that way. Plus, our lower body days, deadlift is what it is, and upper body days are really bench-based. Rows and pull-ups are accessory movements for both of those, aren't they? Yeah. So what do we do on his max effort day? I'm letting his patellar tendons have a little bit of rest. His quad work can consist of his GBP, because he does do sled work, and his speed squats and stuff. Like, I'm going to let his patellar tendons and quads rest, put a little more focus on the posterior chain. I always keep that strong, but notice, other than the 1 heavy set, 3 heavy sets of good mornings done once a week, all his other lower body stuff's going to be traction based. All right, we're going to keep him in traction, which means, again, notice the spine is in traction at the bottom of the glute ham raise. Same thing on the reverse hyper to an even greater degree. We did pull-ups. Okay, outside of just those good mornings on the one workout, it's all traction. It's all traction. Therefore, it's going to be a little easier on his recovery if he's starting to feel beat up. Okay, and I like to do stuff that way. Again, particularly when lifters are getting fatigued. This is the advantage of having all this equipment. A lot of people are like, well, you don't need all this stuff. Yeah, you don't need it, but it sure as hell comes in handy instead of having to deload. How nice would it be if you could not have to deload and get that full extra week of progress because you can just take everything over to traction-based movements or easier dumbbell movements and smaller exercises. Okay, does this make sense to people now? Sure, we could get really strong with just a couple of basic barbells and a good rack and stuff. I've made people elite level strong with that stuff. All these other things, the dumbbells, the cables, these traction-based machines, they come in handy when your lifters are starting to get beat up and you don't want them to take weeks off. It comes in real handy because our stimulus to fatigues go up, the ability to create traction and stuff go up. So his dynamic day, what do we do? It was bands this time, I believe. Yeah, we're running bands. Running them at 5x5 for him right now with lighter weights. Okay, instead of the heavier stuff, again, easy on the recovery for now. It's a little harder to recover. We get better conditioning, but it's a little more on recovery on speed work when we start going heavy for very, very high numbers of sets with lower reps. In this case, it's a little better on the recovery for now. So running him that way. All right, so what do we do? Dumbbell presses, dumbbell extensions, seal rows. Seal rows fall kind of in that category too. No, you're not put into traction, but because you can't cheat or use any leg drive and the spine's not loaded, you just can't do as much weight. I mean, you guys have seen me struggle to get all my sets of 10 with 185 on a seal row. I can pen leg row off the floor. You guys have seen me do 250 for like 12, 13 reps. See the difference? It matters in this context. This equipment becomes useful when your lifter's fatigue is getting higher and you need to keep the stimulus up and bring that fatigue down. Okay. The art of coaching. All right, dynamic work. Safety bar, box squats against bands for 5x5. Conventional deadlifts against bands 5x5. These are lightweight. We're running 25% of the max in bar weight, 25% in band. So in other words, if your max is 400 pounds, it's 100 pounds on the bar, 100 pounds in band tension, right? Puts us 50% of max at the lockout and whatever, 30% or something at the bottom, because you want tension at the bottom. And what do? We finish up with traction-based movements. Okay. After his speed work, there is nothing with the spine loaded. It's glute ham raises, pull-ups, reverse hyperextensions. Spine is put in traction, and this is how I want to finish his training week. We only do the lighter stuff on the speed day. Everything else he's put into traction. All right, this lets us continue to train this fatigued lifter. Same thing with his max lifts. We picked max lifts that don't let him load that much weight because they're more difficult. Safety bar good mornings off pins, those are hard. Using a longer range of motion barbell dramatically cuts the weight he can load on it. But we still get the benefits of a max effort lift. All right, again, all this stuff, traction based. And then we'll add more quad work and stuff back in. He's getting quad work off of his sled work. He's getting it off the dynamic work. We're okay, temporarily. We will need more added back in later. All right, this is how we handle this. You don't just keep pushing beat up lifters. You adjust the fatigue side. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.